Hello, welcome to Human Anatomy Prep. I'm Ty Gardner and I'll be your instructor. In this lecture, we will address body cavities and membranes. Body cavities are pretty easy. There are only two of them, the dorsal and ventral cavities. Of course, both of them have some smaller divisions, so we'll talk about those too. Membranes are pretty easy too. There are a few different kinds. We'll talk most about serous membranes. The posterior or dorsal cavity consists of the cranial cavity and the vertebral canal. The cranial cavity holds the brain, while the vertebral canal holds the spinal cord. The vertebral canal is produced by the holes in each vertebra called vertebral foramina. Singular equals foramen. The anterior, or ventral cavity, consists of the thoracic cavity and the abdominopelvic cavity. The diaphragm, a muscle used for breathing, separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominopelvic cavity. The thoracic cavity contains the heart, lungs, and a few other things such as the esophagus. The portion of the thoracic cavity that does not contain the lungs is called the mediastinum. The mediastinum contains the heart, large vessels, trachea, and esophagus. The abdominopelvic cavity consists of the abdominal and pelvic cavities. Abdominopelvic is a word made by replacing the AL in abdominal with an O and squishing it and pelvic together. The abdominal cavity contains most digestive organs, including the liver, stomach, and most of the intestines. The pelvic cavity is located within a bowl produced by the bones of the pelvis. The pelvic cavity contains the bladder and reproductive organs like the uterus in females or prostate in males. A membrane is a thin barrier. It usually has the capacity to secrete and or act as a selective barrier. Synovial membranes are thin layers of connective tissue lining our joint cavities. Synovial membranes contain synovial fluid and are inflamed in conditions like rheumatoid arthritis. Mucous membranes are layers of cells that produce mucus. Note that OUS is used only in the adjective form. Mucous membranes are found in our digestive, respiratory, and reproductive tracts. Just think about how much mucus you produce from your respiratory tract when you have a cold. Our cutaneous membrane is our skin. It provides a protective layer with important functions like keeping out disease-causing organisms, immunity, and maintaining a constant body temperature, thermoregulation. Serous membranes are found in our ventral cavity. They cover organs and line the cavities, allowing connection and protection. Serous membranes have two layers, the visceral layer and the parietal layer. The visceral layer covers the outer surface of an organ. Viscera means organs. The parietal layer lines the body wall or forms a sac around the organ. Parietal means wall. The picture of the fist on the right shows how the two layers are part of one membrane. There is a cavity between the layers, filled with serous fluid. Serous membranes are associated with our heart, lungs, and abdominal organs. Each has their own name. The pleura is associated with the lungs. The pericardium is associated with the heart. The peritoneum is associated with abdominal organs like the intestines. To speak of a particular membrane, we must describe both location and layer. The membrane on the outer surface, layer, of the heart, location, is therefore the visceral pericardium. The membrane that forms the sac, layer, around the heart, location, is the parietal pericardium. The space between the layers is the pericardial cavity. It normally contains a small amount of serous fluid. If it fills with blood or other fluid, it prevents the heart from filling with blood between contractions. We call this cardiac tamponade. Fluid can be drained through pericardiocentesis. I hope this has been helpful. Your next stop is the video on cells.